Welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Randy Kearse. Today, my guest is Lourdes Cartagena, and she's the author of a new book that's about to come out called Help Me. And Lourdes, thank you very much for coming to the
Thank
show.
you for
I really
having me.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Tell us a little bit about what you do now. I want people to know what you do now.
Well, what I do now, I work for the courts and I work for primarily drug felony cases and do counseling, substance abuse, and case management.
Um, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Brooklyn, Farragut Projects.
Okay.
I grew up there. Actually, my mother still lives there. Um, but I wasn't there for long. I left at the age of 12 because I grew up in a domestic violence home. I was surrounded by alcohol and fighting, physical abuse. So I just couldn't take it anymore. So I had to leave. I felt that was the only way for me to save my life was leave because
I mean, you left home at 12 years old.
at 12 years old, between 12 and 15, I left and came back, left and came back. I got pregnant when I was 15. I had my first and only son. And when he was 3, I was pretty much stable, had my own apartment. I worked the corporate world in the city. I lived in Greenpoint. Some things happened, and I got lost. I got lost in the corporate world, meeting new people. This is a happy hour, let's have drinks. And that's where it began. That's where it all began.
What year was this?
Wow, my son was born in 79. So this was like the beginning of the 1980s. So pretty much the whole 80s, I was out
So you,
there.
you began like caught up in this whole new world of glamour and glitz and corporate America, and it's
Exactly.
it's feeling good and you partying and stuff like that. Who was the first one to introduce you to hard drugs?
It was someone that I was dating. They introduced me to cocaine, and I used to hate cocaine. I was like, "Well, what are you putting that white stuff up your nose for?" But after a while, I cracked, and I said, "All right, I'll try it." Going out to clubs, cocaine and alcohol kind of went hand in hand, and I got used to it. And with the dancing and the clubbing, and it just escalated from there, and it escalated, and I graduated to acid because that's pretty popular in the clubs. Um, and it was just crazy.
Did you feel that at that particular time at your life that you had a problem or you had some type of borderline addiction or anything like that?
No, actually, I felt so free because of the abuse, because everything that I went through, I felt so free. It's like I didn't have a worry in the world. I was just free to do whatever I wanted to do. I was working, I was making money, and I sort of kind of forgot, sad to say, that I had a family and that I had a son, but I knew he was in good hands. My mom and my dad raised him, and I didn't have a worry in the world. And as a younger child, I really didn't have a childhood. My parents were very strict, so I was always home, from school home. I was never really allowed to go out and play with other children, so technically I wasn't allowed to be a kid. So all that energy just got let loose, and
Right.
and that's where my running started.
So let's go back a little ways. You said you grew up in a domestic violent filled household. Um, Talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind. Talk about what it was like and some of those experiences of growing up in that household.
Um, it was kind of rough. I was the only child. My sister's 7 years younger than me, so it was just me, myself, and I. And my father was a functional alcoholic. He always kept a job. He always paid the bills. He was responsible. But when he drank alcohol, he changed. As long as he drank beer, he was cool. He was all right. But when he drank alcohol, he just turned into a whole different monster. And so between my parents and then my mom answering back, he would get more pissed off. And, she experienced her own abuse. So I think what happened was, I learned later on, I think what happened was she used me as an scapegoat so that she wouldn't be abused. And she would be in his ear saying who knows what, and turned it to me. As
Mm.
a child, we all do stuff that you're bad in school, you're talking too much, you didn't do your homework. Yeah, you might get a little butt whipping here and there, but not to the extent that I went through. And for that reason, I felt I had to save my life because this is going on like every day.
Was there a history of domestic violence? Like, did your parents experience domestic violence? And
At the time, I didn't know. I learned this later on, many, many, many years later, when I started doing my homework and working in the field. On my father's side of the family, his father was an alcoholic, and he grew up in a domestic violence home. All his brothers were drug addicts. They all used drugs. They all died from drugs. On my mother's side of the family, they were a little more strict, church-going people, no smoking, no drinking. It was just a lot of favoritism. So it was more, dysfunctional, but there was no drug use. As far as I know, there was no abuse at all.
did you have anybody that at that time that you can talk to that knew what was going on within your household that you can confide in?
I had nobody. I tried once to talk to my mom when I was younger. And as a young lady, as a young girl, you want to speak to your mother. You trust her. That's your friend. That's your mom. But that trust was broken, and I felt betrayed. And I didn't have anybody to speak to. And I always remember this one lady that lived on the 12th floor. I looked at her like my mom. She had 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. And I loved her relationship with her children. And I always wish, wow, I wish my parents were like that, or at least my mom. The relationship, somebody I can sit down and trust and talk to. But when you broke that trust and shared that information with my dad, which wound up me getting beat up like there was no tomorrow, that was the end of that. So I was pretty much alone. I didn't have anybody to speak to. I ran away quite a few times. I was even in Spofford. The cops came in the middle of the night dragging me out of bed to go to Spofford. Went to family court, and I told the judge, if you send me home, I'm leaving again. I do not want to stay there. And he didn't send me there.
Got caught up on the drug scene. You went from cocaine to harder drugs. And how did that happen?
Again, it was all in the club world. I used to go to work, and there was every club in the city, every happy hour there was, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every day of the week there was a happy hour. And I used to connect with the girls at work, and we used to just go and party. So for me, there was no time. There were times that I'd break night and would have to go back to work. If I had to pick up an outfit on my way, that's what I had to do. And it was just alcohol and cocaine, and I went on to acid. At some point, I ran into one individual. Now, this is like the whole flip side, because I'm going from a high scale, so to speak. Now I'm going down to the ghetto, to Bushwick, and it's a whole different crowd. So now I'm smoking weed, and I like the way weed used to make me feel. And from there, it just kind of escalated. Still with the cocaine, it went to the oolies and continued with the alcohol. Any type of alcohol there was, I was drinking it. But I found myself being lazy. I was more attracted to the quick life, being stoned all the time, because it took all the pain away that I didn't want to feel. And that was the bottom line. That was pretty much the reason why I wanted to stay high. Till I got introduced to heroin. Once I got introduced to heroin, that was it. I was lost for 10 years. Nobody didn't know where I was, if I was alive, if I was dead. To selling drugs to support my habit, for 10 whole years. A couple of arrests here and there, and even getting shot.
You got shot.
I got shot with a 357 Magnum. I was on the corner one day. I was doing my thing. Next thing I know, at the time, my significant other, who I wound up marrying, it was a Bonnie and Clyde relationship, actually.
He was a
And
real, y'all was real ride or die,
we were
huh?
out there, and all I heard was he was passing by me and grabbed the stash and run. I didn't have time to say, well, what's going on? You know, I grabbed my stuff and we started running. And next thing I know, when I turned around, I see this guy with a gun. So I just kept running, but I was in the middle. It wasn't for me, but I was in the middle. But God is good. I got shot in my foot with 357 Magnum. I held on to that stash like there was no tomorrow until the people came and got it. Next thing I know, the ambulance, the police, I was taken to the hospital. The most comical thing, but the doctor says it was a miracle that I still had my foot. I shouldn't have a foot with a 357. I just have 4 broken bones across my foot. So they kept me in the hospital, of course, and I had to fight with the doctors because I wasn't on methadone. Never liked it, never did till this day. got busted doing my little bags of dope because I didn't want to get sick, you know.
So even with that experience, did that stop you at that point? Did you slow down? What I mean? Did you think about, oh, I need to change, make some changes at that point?
Absolutely not. All I kept thinking was like, okay, I'm getting, I don't want to get sick. I had to, have a conversation with the doctor and negotiate. So I got busted doing a bag of dope in the hospital. And I had to cop to him, listen, I'm a dope addict. I'm going to get sick. I'm not on a methadone program. Either I walk out or you give me methadone. I ain't asked for much. Just a little pill, half a spoon, whatever, it did it. And the doctor, I guess he had to consult with his superior, and he wound up giving me methadone, so I wound up staying. But the second I was released, cast and all with crutches, I was back on the streets. It just gave me a better spot to hide my drugs.
So when did you decide that enough was enough, or is it more to the story? You went to prison, am I right?
I did. I continued to sell drugs, and I kid you not, Randy. One day I'm standing on a corner, and I always believed in God and a higher power. And I'm standing on a corner. If you ever watch cartoons, you got the good angel on one side and the little devil on the other side. And down the block there was a church, and I loved me a lively church. And I heard the tamarines, and I heard them singing a block away, clear. And I literally felt being pulled. I was being pulled to go to church, go into that church. But I was being pulled by the other way, continue selling drugs. And for me not listening to that little voice, I wound up getting busted. TNT at the time, rolled up, crutches and all, got busted. That was the last bust that I wound up doing 2 years state penitentiary time. That was my downfall. That was my bottom. That's when I finally said to myself, this has got to stop. Either I'm going to get killed or I'm just going to die. One of the two.
So how was it like? I mean, you went to prison. How was that experience for you of being incarcerated? Like,
I was heartbroken. I was scared. It was so many emotions. It was my first time experience. It's like, oh my God, I'm going upstate. I'm going to prison. And I see all these movies and all these stories. And I'm like, oh, will I survive? And it's like, yes, I will survive. I just had to go with the flow. I did it. I had to own up to it. I had to take responsibility. Who was I going to blame? So I just sucked it up like a big girl and went through the system. But that was the best thing that ever happened to me. The best thing was being in prison for 2 years because there was nothing else to do. All I had was time. And I refused to just waste time. So I had to sit with myself by myself. And I kept hearing that little voice inside of me. And I just couldn't kind of figure it out. But then I realized, okay, somebody's trying to tell me something. So let me sit and just listen and just sit still. And I never had any problems. So what I did was I started teaching classes. At the time was the Wang. This was before the computers came out. I taught computers, and this Panamanian lady across the hall from me, she's a strong woman, she was always on my back, and she knew that I wasn't really what I portrayed to be in prison. And she would grab me by my ear because, I was young, and she took me to church. And I loved church. We had outside choirs coming in, and I got involved. Next thing I know, I'm on the church choir singing, and I look forward to my church services. And I went back to school. By this time, I'm 33 years old. I got my GED while I was in prison. I didn't have any problems with the officers. I earned me a private room. I mean, things just started happening to me that was just unexplainable.
um, where's your family at this time in your life? Are you reconnected with them? Have you reached out to your son? What are you doing as far as trying to fix the family ties?
Well, when I got released in '94, I was already reconnected while in prison.
Okay.
I didn't have a choice. I had to let my family know that I was alive. So that dreaded phone call. The first one I called was my dad, and it was like I tried to paint a pretty picture. Says, "Oh, I'm good. I'm upstate. I'm in a vacation in the mountains somewhere. It's beautiful up here." And he's like, I know you're in prison. You're in jail." I was like, okay, thank God he already knew, because I just didn't know how to tell him,
Right, right, right.
But that was such a big relief, he knew. And he was very supportive. They never came up
Okay.
to visit me because, they were a little old. They had, they were sick.
Right, right, right.
And I would never put that pressure on them. But,
Right.
I would call them every week. He would send me my little packages, cards. And so they were supportive in that way. So I was already connected while I was in prison. And in terms of my son, I used to write him letters, start rekindling that family relationship.
How hard was that?
It was difficult. It was really difficult. Um, but at the same time, it was a healing process. And I used to just write letters, write cards, and I never claimed to be his mother, but a friend. And I think that just kind of helped the relationship. He was never mad. He was still young, but I explained that. I threw it all on the table. It's not because I didn't love you, I abandoned you, I didn't care. This is what people do when they're on drugs, and they don't care about anything or anybody. So that was all good. And I had the support of this lady across the hall from me, praying, because every day I used to pray, and that's what got me through during my time. Um, so when I was released in 94, I was, I'm going to back up a little bit. When I was set for parole, I was denied. They denied me. So I was like,
Mm.
well, isn't that something? When I was still ready to go get me some crack and some weed, I was ready to go. They said, go. Now that I'm ready to go and I'm a whole different mindset, they're going to tell me no. But I was better able to accept it because I knew and God knew I wasn't ready. And I
Mm.
was okay with that. I was okay with that. I says, okay, God knows what he's doing, so I'm going to just keep rocking it in here. Let me see what else I can do, just to prepare myself, because I know when I get back out there to the streets, is all hell's going to break loose. And sure enough, in 94, got released. I was a little nervous, but at the same time, I stood fast. I already knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to go back into the corporate world. And you meet old friends. The first thing they say is like, "Hey, how you doing? What's up? Got a good bag of dope?" I'm like, I don't do that no more, but I don't knock people that do it. So you go ahead and enjoy it. And I kept it going. And from there, my parole officer was a sweetheart. Never had any issues. Gave them what they asked for. And the comical thing was when I used to go for urine tests, it was like, "Oh, don't worry about it." I'm like, "You're kidding me, right? I've been holding it all day, and you're not going to take my urine?" Because I was so compliant, I wasn't in that mindset anymore because I saw what it did to me, to my family. My father's side of the family, they all died of drugs. The biggest thing that hit me was I used to get high with people shooting, sharing the same needle.
Mm.
They all died of AIDS. And to this day, I always check myself, and thank God, the biggest blessing is I have a good bill of health. And I sit there and I said to myself, that wasn't nobody but God. I don't care who says what, because that should have been me. We're sharing the same needle, and everybody else going to drop dead, and I'm still living. So there's a purpose for me. There's a mission, and I have to go with it. And that's just kind of go with the flow, and that's what led me to what I do today.
How hard was it for you to write your book?
While writing my book, I'll admit it, I've cried snots and boogers because it's still a healing process in certain areas, but it's hard, but at the same time it's healing. So I think it'll do me good. And also I want to send a message out to other people, to these young adults that I'm seeing more of today.
Were you afraid that people, which they shouldn't, but people are people, that they would try to judge you based on your past experience, especially in the field that you're working in now?
People will always judge you, Randy. It doesn't matter. I didn't have that fear. I didn't care. I didn't care what people say about me. I didn't care how they looked at me because I knew that I had something bigger within myself that had my back. And that's all that mattered to me. Whatever it was that I needed to do, that I wanted to do, I just went and did it. And I knew that I was going to accomplish it. And I had this drive, this fire within me. I can't even explain it to you. It was just like a motor just going and going and going.
How long have you been working on the book? I guess all your life because it's your life story.
I've always worked on the books, always worked on the books. When I came out of prison, of course, parole sent me to treatment, so I was, doing outpatient. To me, it was more aftercare, but I just went with the flow. And what got me was I had one counselor. She was on a spiritual level, and I think I was like the only one that kind of understood her in the group. So that just kind of motivated me. The director did the assessment on me. When she took my whole background and saw the stuff that I did in the corporate world, she was like, go apply for a job. They have a couple of positions open. And it was secretarial work, and I was okay with that because I just refused to be on welfare. I've always worked. I never liked to be on the system. That was just not me. So I went, and the gentleman that interviewed me, he, of course, the $10,000 question, have you ever been convicted of a crime? And I thank Fortune Society for that because they taught me how to answer it. And I did. And the gentleman says to me, well, why did you feel compelled to tell me that, you're on parole? I said, well, honesty is the best policy. And if the employer chooses to give me an opportunity and give me a job, that's fabulous. And if not, that's okay too. So I was hired on the spot. And that's how I wound up working for a program. And I had a colleague, a social worker. I call her thorn on my side. She signed me up for school, and I'm getting all this stuff, and I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm like, I'm exposed to the secretarial work, the substance abuse, and I'm learning from other people. Now they got me in school, and it was so subtle. But the thing was, that's how I just got attracted to it. I said, oh, what the hell? Let me just give this a try and not be resistant. And I did. And I wound up going to school to get my credentials for substance abuse. The next thing I know, we got a new director. Everybody quit. So it was just me and a director. So guess what? I had to wear a vocational counselor, a counselor's hat. I had all the hats, which was a blessing because I got all my training hands-on in one place. And that's how I got into the substance abuse piece. And plus, I was able to relate to the clients. The clients were able to relate to me.
It's easier to relate to the clients based on do you share your past experience with the clients?
I don't. I don't like to, unless it's someone that I feel or appears to be in a deep hole that just like really sees no way out. Because, society has this stigma, these labels, oh, you're a drug addict, you did it once, you'll go back to it, you've been arrested, you're a convict, all this other stuff. And so while I'm sitting there, I get a kick out of it. And I'm like, well, would you believe if I tell you that I was on drugs for 2 years? Would you believe that I was in prison? I says, is there a special look that I'm supposed to have? And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I know what that's about. And I speak their language. So now I see the shift in their face. So now they're able to better relate to me and they're more open to it because I've walked that journey as opposed to someone who didn't.
What do you hope for people to accomplish by reading your book?
I hope to spread the message to anybody and everybody. There's nothing that I haven't experienced. I don't care if it's young men, young women, even adults, to give them hope, inspiration, to motivate them, to inspire them, and just let them know that it can be done. But you have to be willing to change and do the work. But it can be done. And I'm available to help them in any way that I possibly can. But just sharing my story will give somebody else hope.
Do you go out and speak to women in different, programs or at the prisons and stuff like that? Do you do that?
I don't. I don't.
You
used to, and it's funny that you say that. I went to a conference the other day, and I had a pastor approach me, and she was on the other side of this conference, and she just walked right over to me, and she said, my spirit told me to walk over to you and speak to you. And I'm like, really? Okay. And, I told her a little bit about me because she's in the prison ministries. And I I told her 2 sentences, and she said, "I need you to come and speak for me." I'm like, I'm open to it. So
Yeah.
I know God is opening doors,
Right.
so it may go that way, but whichever way it goes, to give that message out.
If somebody's watching this program, where can they find you if they want to learn more about you and what you're doing, where to get your book from and all of that?
Well, they can find me on lourdescartagena.com. It's a long name. It's Lourdes.
Slow it down. Slow it down. Look, my listeners don't listen that fast.
LOURDESCART as in Tom AGENA.com. Right now, my website's under construction. I'm revamping the whole thing.
Okay.
But there you will find a lot of information, and that can be reached there. You can send me an email. You know, once you get accustomed to life on the outside, I mean, it's been such a long time. You can easily, and I believe, I'm a strong believer in the universe puts me in a certain planes to keep it green for me, because I don't forget where I come from. I don't ever forget where I come from. It doesn't matter if I'm walking down the street, I can see a bum, I can see somebody smoking weed. The kids remind me where I came from because I was there. And I always try to, give somebody an encouraging word. Sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. If I can save 1 out of 5, I did my job. But most people are open to listening to what I have to say.
If somebody's watching this, if they're in prison or they're going through a program, what would you tell them? What would be some words of advice that you would tell them?
My words of advice is that, of course, the drug world doesn't lead you anywhere. It's about life and death. That's pretty much the bottom line. You have the power, the authority to change your life, to do better. What's your passion? Whatever it is that you love to do, because everybody has something they love to do. They can do it, and they have that power, and they just don't know it. They haven't tapped into it. And this is where I come in, and I just love to help people tap into that. It says you are the creator of your life. You're writing that book. What's the ending going to look like?
That's what's up. That's how you inspiring me. I'm getting
yeah,
all motivated, inspired. Right, I'm all pumped up right now. So, what do you see yourself in 5 years? Where's Lourdes Cartagena in 5 years?
5 years, I'm going to be a millionaire. Because I'm working on so many projects. Aside from this, I have a real estate business now.
Okay.
I'm working with a celebrity broker, Dr. Tiana Von Johnson. I'm getting ready to create another business, which is going to be geared to men and women with a background of substance abuse and prison. Because there is hope. Just because you did jail time, I don't care how many years, I don't care how long your rap sheet is, somebody going to give you a job. There's always that one person that's going to give you that opportunity, but it's how they view themselves. So that's pretty much it.
Yo, you don't heard it. You don't heard it straight from Lourdes Cartagena, the author of Help Me. And it's I know it's going to be a powerful book. I know you put your heart, your soul into this book. And what about your family? Have they got any sense of what's in the book yet, or have you told them about the book?
My son knows about it. I already got people asking me, where can I find the book? I'm like, it hasn't dropped yet. I'm still working on it. So I set a date for September 30th. But I already have people asking me about it. They're eager to read about it, to read about my story. A lot of people was like, wow, I never knew that you went through all that.
Is your mom and dad still alive?
My dad passed away about 5 years ago. My mom is still alive. And we still keep in touch. A little dysfunctional. I mean, just like every other average family,
Right.
but for the most part, we're still in touch.
Okay.
And I've been clean, and I think I've proven myself, not by speaking words, but just by actions, which is the most important. Actions speak louder than words.
That's right. That's how we do it on Straight Talk.
That's
You don't
right.
heard it. Straight Talk.